On this episode of the podcast, I have with me Hari Kodakalla. He is the head of data and analytics at Frost Bank. We're going to be talking about responsible AI, and we're going to be diving into areas of last mile adoption. We're going to be talking about how are you protected from a regulatory customer perspective? What does the AI team look like, right? Like who should be in that team? And humans are still in the loop, and they're very critical. So got a bunch of stuff we're going to try to unpack with Hari. We'll see how far we get. Hari, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Amir. Looking forward for this conversation. A very important area in this current era of AI ML, making an impact in every direction as we look.
Absolutely. So I guess we're going to be talking about, the theme is responsible AI. And I can't, I guess everyone, or not everyone, I said a lot of people have seen deepfake videos, and they're really hard to tell. Sometimes, I know the Tom Cruise one was one of the first ones out there. I think I had to look at it a number of times, and I still couldn't discern whether or not that was him. I guess it was fake, so it was, but I really couldn't tell. And as we're starting to see AI come out, ChatGPT, we're seeing content issues, various lawsuits from content originators questioning how their work is being used. So there's a lot of stuff coming up. I mean, I think we're just at the tip of this iceberg. When we're talking about responsible AI, just to make sure we have a good context of where you're leading this conversation, what does that even mean?
So responsible AI, what it means is pretty much essentially, whenever we are using AI as an enabler for anything that we are trying to apply AI towards, making sure that we keep the ethical aspect, the responsibility with respect to keeping it transparent, protecting rights of human beings in general, and at the same time, content rights, and making sure we don't bring in biases and things that generally is kind of the challenge in the real world with most decision processes. Making sure we don't let that creep into the AI realm as well, because as you know, the understanding of AI after a particular point in time of usage, the explainability has to be very, very transparent and very, very clear so that we know how AI is making those decisions. So making sure those aspects have been checked off on, have been taken into consideration before going mainstream with a particular AI solution. And as you know, AI is impacting different areas, different ways. And that's exactly what responsible AI means, making sure that an ethical framework is there. It's more systemic in nature, not a one-off checkbox, but something where there is a deliberate attempt by folks that are implementing AI, adopting AI, are fully clear about the way the AI is going to work and how it's going to impact them and its users.
And I guess when we're talking about AI, we're talking about responsible AI, and I guess the context of what we're going to be talking about is the business world, the enterprise world, just to provide context of how things work and kind of what we're seeing. I guess when you're looking at a business who wants to implement AI at the top level, and they need to put together a team, obviously, if it was a traditional data project or software project, we have a good idea of who we pull into that matrix project. When it comes to an AI project, do we pull in different resources because of the nature of the project?
Certainly. I mean, when we talk about AI, whether we are just adopting an AI solution that has been pre-built or something that we're building, beyond the general technical resources that are needed to kind of enable that or manifest that particular implementation, the governance aspect is a key part of it as well. So taking all the parameters and the scope of that AI implementation and driving it through a responsible kind of a council of sorts, like a collective thought process, making sure you put together a governance structure around it. There is a framework that every AI use case or AI implementation will kind of follow, so that it consists of all the various aspects, like checking off on the risks that that particular implementation will be facing, at least the known risks, and then also examining the implementation of AI such that are there any new risks that it's going to create once the implementation is done, so that there is a review of the AI implementation from every dimension. And when I say every dimension, it means bringing in the data scientists, the engineers, ethicists, management, and security folks. So every dimension essentially that is within the scope of that AI implementation, so that all perspectives are taken in, the customer perspective, the user perspective, and evaluated for risk, responsibility, ethics, transparency, and making sure all the policies that the organization wants to adhere to and wants to implement around the responsible AI is taken upfront. It's part of, not as an afterthought, but it is part of the process, so that it makes sure the particular implementation will respect human rights. It'll be fair, it'll be transparent, and it'll be making a reduction in biases so that they don't get amplified in that implementation. So that's the kind of setup you would do from a team perspective. You put a governance framework around it, which starts with a responsible AI charter, followed by a council, followed by the actual implementation team, and going through that steps like we do with any other governance-oriented, I would say, practice.
And that makes sense, right? Any other, regulated industry area framework, there's a lot of them out there that have been applied. So we know we can do that. I guess when it comes to this area, AI, where not a lot of people have experience, and, I guess, you need regulatory and customer, perspective protection, right? I mean, you might have different areas to look at, which other frameworks and other regulatory issues come into play that do that. When it comes to AI, where not a ton of people have implemented anything, obviously the buzz is there. People are trying to implement it, breaking off smaller projects and just trying to, test the waters, establish ROI. Is there going to be some? I mean, there's going to be some bumps, but when we're looking at applying what you mentioned, putting the right, frameworks, governance frameworks in place, how will we know initially that we've put the right frameworks in place? Is it, especially given AI, and maybe the impact could be wider because we're not going to maybe have as much control over what we envision the outcome being?
Well, there will always be some gray areas, right? It's not going to be black and white from day one. But from a trajectory perspective or a direction perspective, if organizations focus on, protecting themselves from regulatory penalties, maintaining customer trust, right? Making sure there is a conscious effort within the framework put towards data privacy and ethics regulation. It doesn't have to be enforced because only through regulation, right? Even though there is no regulatory framework fully baked in today. But as you know, all the leaders from the major tech companies are actively courting the lawmakers and the senators and the whole regulatory, I would say, apparatus of society, correct, in the space. And those regulations will come along the way. However, when we are, as an organization, when we are looking at AI, if we look at it directionally from those aspects to make sure we are not exposing ourselves to unnecessary liabilities, we are making sure we are putting the right set of checks and frameworks. And to help with that, there are plenty of resources available today as well. I mean, there are ethical guidelines frameworks from IEEE, and there is also an AI ethics impact group that offers variety of, AI ethics resources, guidelines, white papers, ethical frameworks that organizations can adopt, examine and review what makes sense within their operating model and adopt that. And at the same time, there is a constant evolution in that space, right? There are government regulatory bodies that are adding these guidance around that. And at the same time, when you use the resources available today, even from a technology standpoint. Say, for example, you're going to adopt Microsoft, or you're going to Azure for doing some AI work, or say you're going to go to Google, or the typical providers that you have in all OpenAI. They all have a certain security framework, ethical framework that's already baked into their system. So when you adopt that, you are bringing that into your ecosystem, and you review that, do a detailed review through your governing bodies, and make sure you understand the legal ramifications, the framework ramifications to your operating model, and adopt it in a balanced fashion. And this will change as time goes on, because the regulators will catch up with the certain aspects, and there will be a learning curve there as well. And those changes will start influencing the operating models. However, there is a lot of work done already, and there is more work being done every day. So that will guide those practices effectively.
And I guess as you're looking at, you're trying to put in the safeguards, you're trying to make sure that the solution out is optimal. Because in the end of the day, for AI to be adopted, people have to trust it, and people have to realize, that they need to understand there's a comfort of, there's some guardrails in what response or answers are being provided by the AI that the company has implemented for whatever particular solution it is. People have to use it, so they have to trust it. And I think that's pretty common along every product adoption is that trust component. How does a company go about addressing that last mile adoption to make sure people trust and use the solution they're implementing within their companies?
So there are multiple ways companies can address that, right? One is measuring impact continuously. Organizations should establish metrics, KPIs, to measure the impact of those the AI efforts, right? And providing regular assessments and audits, and also taking all of that information and presenting it back, right? They should ensure that there is transparency in the algorithms. There are clear explanations of the AI decisions. They will be very, very key from a responsible AI perspective. Users and stakeholders should understand how the AI system works, and why is it making the specific choices that it makes, and making sure this process is adopted around your AI implementation, such that it's a very predictable process and a predictable outcome. So to do that, there are if you follow the standards that are coming towards on these things, there's generally, there are 4 key pillars. One is to know your data. What are the sources that you're using? Make sure your AI decisions are explainable, and your data is well protected, and the quality of the data is well understood. And then the benefits of that particular AI implementation are clearly understood and made aware to the users as well. So as long as an organization follows all these things, it will be a very good customer trust building exercise, right? The degree of surprises will be much far fewer than what otherwise it would be. And again, it's a continuous improvement process. To factually say that we adopt responsible AI, organizations have to understand that it's going to be an ongoing process. It's going to require continuous improvement and adaptation of the evolving ethical standards, right? Very much like if you dial back time 20 years ago or 25 years ago, there was nothing called cyber warfare, right? It used to be the general warfare or whatever. But as the networks improved, as technology improved, the internet came along, and all the evolution that has happened along the way, today cyber warfare is a pretty broadly adopted term and a risk that did not exist a couple of decades ago, right? So with AI, it would be the similar evolution. And for organizations to be very, very aware of that and focus on implementing their responsible AI in that fashion will be very critical.
I like that. Yeah, I definitely can see the analogy from cybersecurity and the steps and inroads they've made and established their own frameworks, and obviously each company's trying to protect themselves offensively, defensively. I guess with AI, you're going to have very similar trajectories. When you're looking at, and you mentioned, that let's say, the platform you want to adopt has the AI, safeguards built in. Same could be said with cloud implementations. They offer a certain amount of security infrastructure. A lot of that still falls onto the company to make sure that it's implemented for their use properly. Engineers know how to use it. They understand the nuances. When you're looking at something like AI, and it's still really early, obviously consumer AI is, we're hearing a lot about it because that's coming first. When you're looking at enterprise AI and you're looking at, being responsible, putting all these safeguards in place, does that mean you just need to slow down, or can you still try to move at a fast, iterative pace, but just know that these things have to be figured out as you're going?
I think slowdown may not be an option because the way industry moves. If you don't keep up, you'll be left behind. It's as simple as that. Having said that, it doesn't mean you just embrace everything that comes along your way, right? That's exactly why you need responsible AI. That's exactly why the framework has to be adopted, be it consumer AI or enterprise. The impact to the respective domain or the community of users within that respective domain will be a similar impact, right? And as long as organizations adopt, adapt, and follow these processes in a disciplined fashion, the overall impact of that AI adoption will be far more predictable than otherwise. Having said that, it's not necessarily true that there won't be rogue AI implementations and risks and other things. Very much like that's why I was kind of drawing that parallel from cybersecurity, right? That whole apparatus is constantly reinventing itself in order to stay ahead of the rogue security aspects, right? AI won't be any different. We'll have to constantly evolve, make sure that the right set of ethical framework, guidelines, regulatory framework, all those things come together, protecting the consumers and the users at large, right? And make it more predictable. You never know. I mean, it could lead to different kinds of laws in place, what AI can and cannot do, and things of that nature as time goes on. But that's just that's the evolutionary nature of this space. And starting with a responsible AI framework up front definitely gives you the guardrails to be successful in it.
How much does, let's say somebody like you who is responsible for a lot of this stuff, day to day, how much of your time needs to be spent in the here and now, and also looking at emerging products and growth? Because obviously there is a fast development process that's happening, and what you think might be good to develop, implement today, maybe in 6 months' time is less than optimal. How do you balance, as you mentioned, you don't have a choice to wait because things are moving quickly? How do you balance keeping that eye on right now and short, medium, long term in terms of just emerging product growth and the fast developing nature of this of AI?
So, I mean, you touched on that earlier as well. I mean, you start small, you iterate, and then you expand based on the results that you see and the improvements, making sure your success metrics are being met. And when I say success metrics, it's not just the implementation of AI; it's also your governance benefits that you are looking for, the agility that you need. And likewise, the kind of support it's garnering in terms of enrollment of the various quarters of your organization, as well as when you take it broader to the market, you're talking about the marketplace, the society at large, the regulatory framework, all these things, the agility that you need, the support you need is coming together, and all that will happen iteratively. So you have to start small and then slowly expand on it. But as long as you're sticking to these core pillars of the responsible AI and making sure those guardrails are there and the framework is there, I think you will have a more predictable path forward.
I like it. I guess the question that kind of ties in, a lot of this to the corporate environment, and talking about commitment and talking about investments, and making sure that commitment includes responsible AI, as you're kind of seeing stakeholder adoption grow? How do those conversations look from your perspective?
Again, every organization is different, right? And usually things like this, when it starts at the top, usually it permeates in a better fashion. But in some cases, many organizations might, fail to show that strong commitment to responsible AI and their AI initiatives, because it also depends on their degree of understanding, right? Or in some cases, maybe they don't see much weight in it. So those are some of the risks that are always there. However, a genuine commitment will require dedicated resources, leadership support, clear policies. And those are some of the things that have to be kind of thought through and lined up, and that support has to be built. And coming top down usually will ensure that. Now, how much time will go in that? It's all subjective, right? There is an element of literacy that has to be brought together, and there is a degree of commitment that has to be put in. As long as you see that happening, I think it'll go through in a much predictable fashion. Again, now, if you had to bid on how much time it will take, because it all depends for each organization, it's different, and also depends on the scale of the organization, right? And the kind of leadership enrollment that you need to happen before you can engage tactical resources and make it more, I would say, standard operating model for the company at large or the organization at large. But given that understanding, and it's like carving out some time dedicated to focus on it, from a I would say leadership perspective, will definitely give you the most amount of effective results as you go along.
I like it. It's all going so fast, and I think a lot of the points you mentioned obviously are, we'll look back, as you mentioned, to the cybersecurity analogy, and a year, 2, 5, and we'll look back and see the progress and how quickly, I guess with cybersecurity, things have taken a little bit of time. And as the cloud has impacted cybersecurity, it's shot up in terms of the being at the forefront of every CIO or CTO's mind, as AI is going to probably do similar. Who do you think, or who do you think that the stakeholders will be that'll start identifying that similar trend? Will it be the CIO, CTO? Will it be on the legal side, the people that'll start championing the responsible AI solutions?
I think it will start at every level, all the way to the boards in the organizations. In case of large companies like public limited, in case of small business, it could be with the ownership and the leadership of those businesses. Nevertheless, I think a lot of them will get the advantage of the generally accepted best practices as they get more solidified in the industry. And every consulting organization out there is putting material and frameworks in upfront, and as they get adopted, they get integrated. This will get easier. But involvement-wise, like I said, at every quarter, all the way starting from the top and the board to the employees getting educated, right, is a big part of it. They all will have to be included in that in a iterative fashion and in a progressive fashion, and that will be very, very critical for that success. So and this will be at every level of stakeholders to make sure they understand that responsible AI is crucial. It will involve things like not just talking about it, but putting workshops in place, training programs, awareness campaigns, and make sure there is a shared understanding of the importance of ethical AI practices. And this is not new to industry at large, right? So take, for example, when SOX compliance came into bear in the financial world, there's a good amount of education and process changes and stakeholder enrollment, and explaining why one has to follow the rules, and then what is the impact of not following those rules and things of that nature, right? So that education is always a big part of it, and responsible AI won't be any different from that perspective. It's just that enterprises and organizations have to, like I said, carve out and make that a priority before adopting any AI, because there are so many instances today that you'll see where results went off the charts or off the tracks because there was no monitoring happening. They didn't know a product that was adopted had started using some models which were not fully understood, and they started producing negative results and was late to came to the surface late, and then the damage caused has to be remediated, right? So events like that may still happen in some cases. However, the probabilities is what you kind of bring it down of such events happening. And that's why this education will be a big part of that.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll have to keep an eye out on this and have you come back and we can revisit some of these topics. I'm sure we're going to learn a lot in the next year, 2 years. I think we'll start seeing a lot of the details, and the actual retrospectives will be interesting to see how we can improve and how we thought about things. But Hari, appreciate you coming on. Thanks for sharing. I think it's a great subject. It's just only going to grow in importance. So I appreciate your thoughts.
Thank you, Amir. It was a pleasure talking to you about this topic that's very near and dear to me, and it's very important for the overall larger, I think, world out there when we are in this interesting times of AI and ML impacting us every day, right? So yeah, thank you very much for having me on your show, and looking forward for more conversations in the future.
Absolutely. And we'll post your LinkedIn. So if somebody wants to reach out to pick your brain, is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, awesome. So we'll make sure we include that in the show notes. Again, thank you very much for being on the show. That's it for this episode. We'll be back again, different guests, different topic. If you like the episode, you like the podcast, share it with somebody else. It's a great subject. Getting more conversation around responsible AI is what we should be doing. If you want to send me any feedback, you want me to talk about anything in particular, please let me know. I'd love to cover more for you. Like, subscribe, do all those things that you know how to do. Appreciate it. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.